Now, we're celebrating the NHS's birthday today, aren't we? And lots of you have been getting in touch with your stories and reflections on some of the incredible achievements of the health service. And we're going to spend a bit of time really thinking about that now.
With us in studio now, John Hoyle. John's wife, Emily, tragically passed away following a battle with cystic fibrosis.
And the excellent care provided by the NHS extended her life by 10 years and allowed her to start a family. And John, first of all, we just want to celebrate Emily, really, and the amazing life that she had, largely thanks to the NHS.
Yeah, exactly. If it wasn't for 2 amazing lung transplants, we wouldn't have had 10 more years of Emily. We wouldn't have our son, Henry. She wouldn't have been able to get a world record climbing a volcano in South America. So, of course, I and our family are huge supporters of the NHS.
The reason that we invited you in, we should say to anyone watching, Emily was my flatmate at university, so we've been friends for 20 years. And the first time I met Emily, she there we are at our friend's wedding, she told me she had cystic fibrosis, and this was it's an inherited disease that people are born with. I think it's the largest hereditary disease in this country. And from the moment she was a baby, effectively, she's had to have long-term treatment to help her survive. Just explain to us how Emily managed that, because my impressions of Emily were always that she wasn't defined by her illness. The NHS made her life possible.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she had a huge drugs regime in the latter years, 6 hours of intravenous drugs a day, but even from when you knew her, hundreds of pills a day. And I think, lots of people have been talking about the NHS's challenges today. She became expert in gaming the NHS. She knew her way around that system so well that doctors were sort of lived in fear of her, and that's amazing on her part for being able to use what is a brilliant system when it succeeds for her own benefit.
It's always also a tribute to you, because she lived with cystic fibrosis, so did you, and you guys were married for 15 years, and you reckon out of those 15, four of her years and your years were spent in hospital.
Yes, I mean, as kind of inpatients, and we didn't obviously know we were signing up to sort of a weird hospital prison sentence, but of course, and that excludes, the certainly monthly but often weekly visits when she was an outpatient. So the NHS has been a huge part of our life, which is why I've got such an affinity for the staff in particular, and we've got, since she's died, actually, that's left a bit of a hole, not having those relationships with all those amazing people who supported us.
Because Emily passed away at the age of 38 last November, and, we both feel this hugely and miss her every day, but are so grateful that we got that extra time. Because when I first met her, she told me that she was going to live to 30, or perhaps even younger. And it was the staff that you talk about, those people that were nursing her at her lowest point. I mean, tell us about those transplants and the incredible story of what she survived there.
Yeah, 2 brutal lung transplants, double lung transplants in 2012 and 2016.
Has anyone else ever had 2?
There are now a few,
okay.
And in fact, some of our friends, including Amanda, who climbed the mountain with her, and Sophie, who sadly is struggling not just with lungs but also with bowel issues now, have benefited in a similar way to Emily. But I think what makes her truly extraordinary is the self-discipline and, of course, the record in the middle of it. Not many people have been able to achieve that, and she was a force of nature.
Yeah, she really was. And Eamon was able to help a little dream come true for her at the end last year, and she was a huge Strictly fan. And this just always sticks in my mind, because you'd managed to get her access to go to one of the live shows. And she was in hospital. She'd been in hospital for a really long time at the Harefield. This was just before she was moved to a hospice. But all the staff made that possible for her to go, because it was a huge undertaking. They were all singing the theme tune of da, 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 up and down the wards.
But the thing that got me, John, was that she was well up for that visit, and anybody that I knew on Strictly, they engaged with her and they thought everything was great. But then, Isabel would tell me she's going really downhill really quickly after that. It was as if she'd held herself back. That was a big thing for her, and then downhill.
Yeah, she was in a hospice a week after Strictly, so it really was an amazing gift. We're so grateful for that. We were treated like our own little celebrities on that night, which was wonderful, and an amazing bucket list thing for her to get to do.
Just then, finally, I suppose, obviously our thoughts very much about Emily, but what are your feelings when you think about the NHS and its future? There's lots of people bashing the NHS and, there are lots of questions about whether or not it's sustainable.
Yeah.
What's your kind of overview of it all?
Well, we come from a family where my mother-in-law, who you've met, and our aunt were nurses at St Bart's, as were my mother-in-law's parents. They met at St Bart's, so there's a huge sort of historical affinity for the NHS. And then, of course, we've benefited not just through lung transplants, but also, fertility. And it is a system that, when it works, is formidable. And I've spent, I've lived in a lot of other countries, and there are few countries that can compare to what we have. So I understand that it's creaking, and we've had sort of ringside seats because Emily's godmother was Dame Sally Davis, who was Chris Whitty's predecessor. And I've heard from her the challenges of keeping this enormous organisation going in a time where the UK is not as rich as it has been historically. And I'm just grateful we have what we do have, although I do acknowledge it's under more pressure than it ever has been before.
Yeah.